Sometimes life is messy. Have you ever wished you could refocus your mind, home, relationships, and work life? Join us as we use research-based information to make practical changes and simplify life. This is Life Simplified.
Welcome to Life Simplified. This is Tiffany, and I'm your host for today's episode. If you've been with us for the last 2 weeks, you know that this month we are fighting the freeze. And we've had some excellent topics this month, so if you're just joining us, I highly recommend you go back and check out the first 2 episodes for February. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about freezing out friends and the fact that we don't want to do that. Sometimes, if you're like me, when you get in a slump or you're feeling kind of funky, instead of reaching out to those around you, you may tend to go in your shell and want to seek some solitude, which is not always bad. It's good to have alone time. But if you find yourself freezing out friends when you need them the most, then this episode is for you. And I think we're all going to relate to it in a few ways. So freezing out friends, in my mind, is all about social isolation. And we don't want to socially isolate because when we are struggling, that's when we need people the most. And so today's episode, I'm actually pulling a lot of information from a lesson that I taught a few months back on meaningful social connections. And these resources were written originally by the University of Kentucky specialist for homemaker audiences, and then I've adapted them a bit to work with my junior homemaker audiences, which are younger 9 to 18-year-old clientele. But I think it relates to all of us. I mean, age doesn't matter when we're talking about social connections and the need that we have to have relationships with one another. So we are going to stop freezing out our friends. But first we have to know what social connectedness is, because that's what we're talking about today, is how we can fight social isolation by having social connectedness. And so according to the CDC, social connectedness is when you have and feel support. So you feel valued, you feel cared about. I don't think any of us wants to not feel valued, cared about, and supported. So this is important. This is for everybody. But I want to break it down a little bit, ladies, because social connectedness is not just having support, but there are some different things that help us to have strong social connections. And so we want to think about the quality of our relationships, the quantity of our relationships, and the diversity of our relationships. So before I dig deeper, does that surprise you all, those 3 things, when you think about relationships?
So the diversity, I guess I never really thought about having different types. I mean, I guess I have, but just not analyzing myself to see like, hey, do I have different types of friends?
Yeah, I think that was the one piece that stood out to me too, because we know we want to have quality relationships. And I think the older we get, the more we understand that the quality of the relationship, that can I trust you? Can you trust me? Do I know that you're someone that's going to have my back when I need you? That is really, really important. And that's that quality. Quantity, I think when we're younger, we think we need like all the people, like surround me. I want to be, because we want to be popular, right? Or I guess the term now is famous. Like my teenager would be like, they're famous. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Famous people live in Hollywood. They're on television. They're on my radio. Like, that's famous. But popular told us that we needed a lot of friends. And we know as we get older, we don't need a lot of friends, but we do need more than one, probably. And we do want them to be quality relationships, but we also want to look at the diversity of our relationships, because different relationships do different things and support us in different ways. And so we may have friends that are supportive coworkers that can help us in those realms, that are supportive family members that understand the dynamics we've been raised in, that are supportive just friends that know us on that level, or maybe supportive in a religious or spiritual aspect. So having that diversity really kind of gives you a full picture of that support on all areas of your life. So we want to have that social connectedness. We want to have quality, quantity, and diversity in our relationships. And we know that connectedness is important because we are meant to have relationships. We need support. But there are some other key gifts that we get when we are connected to other individuals. So being connected contributes to healthier and longer lives. So when we have people around us, when we have people we can count on, we actually live longer. It positively impacts our overall health and well-being. So it's not just emotional, it's physical, spiritual, all of the areas. Protects against the negative effects of loneliness and social isolation. And we're going to talk a little bit about those here in just a second. But also, when we are connected with people, when we have those supportive relationships, it influences our ability to make healthy choices, including the ability to cope with stress, anxiety, and depression. And I like this one right here because, again, if you haven't listened to our first 2 episodes this month, we really key in on how having support helps us to make healthy choices, to make different decisions, to cope with stress and burnout and some of those other things. So this is really key, and I think it's really valuable information. So loneliness and social isolation. What do you think when you hear those 2 words? Is it the same thing or is it different in your own mind? I'm gonna tell you whether it's the same or different in a minute. But when you just off the cuff hear loneliness or social isolation, what do you think?
I think they're different.
I do too. I think so too. Because I think you can. Well, and I guess social isolation is more than just taking a little break, having some alone time. Mm-hmm. But I think, you can be alone and you're not lonely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that you pointed that out because there is me time, and me time is not necessarily social isolation. So let's talk about the difference. Loneliness is feeling alone or disconnected. So loneliness is the emotion. It's the feeling. I can be in a room of 100 people and be super lonely if I don't feel connected to anyone in the room. Have y'all ever experienced that? I mean, I know I've had times where I might have a class with 100 people, but I didn't know anyone. And so you walk in and you're just like, oh, this is me by myself. Clearly I'm not. There's a room full of people, but if you're not connected, you feel alone. So it's a feeling. Now, social isolation is the lack of relationships or very little or no support or contact. So you literally are physically alone. You are isolated from other people and you do not feel like you have any support. There's no one there. So it's kind of a little bit different in that way and so social isolation may be something that you choose, or it may be something that has just happened and you have to choose to get yourself out of it. I know during COVID, and I hate even talking about it, we all experienced a lot of social isolation because we were told to isolate for our own protection physically, but emotionally, that was really hard for a lot of people to not be able to talk with each other. So
yeah, it was hard for me, and it really I've noticed a lot different because I have 2 kids. My first was born during COVID. So that's the time when you need that support. You need those people because if you've ever had a newborn, and he was tough, the no sleep and the crying, you need those. So then it was overwhelming because, you're relying on your people that are in your house because that's who you could be around, and then you stress each other out. And now it's my other son. He's a little easier. He sleeps a little bit better, but we're not in the COVID, so we have those people that can come and help and do and, send the kids off, and where we weren't able to do that. So I think that's real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think what's really important to note that kind of points out is while loneliness and social isolation are not the same thing, they can occur together. Mm-hmm. Because at that time you were socially isolated because you were told to be for your protection, but that also leads to loneliness because we need those people to support us and connect with us. And so that's a really tough place to be in, is even though it's not the same, we can have that kind of co-occurring for us.
And I think sometimes we think that we don't need people. We don't need a large group of people. We don't need a whole lot of friends. And while that may be the case, having quality relationships like you talked about, we do need others. And I heard a story on the radio this morning on the way to work, and it was so interesting to me and kind of funny that it ties into this. But the story was about a sunfish in an aquarium, and the aquarium was, I believe, doing renovations. So they had closed to the public for a little bit, and that the sunfish was acting so different. Like they thought it was sick because it was not acting like itself, and it just kind of was sad. And so they were thinking, well, we need to give this fish medicine. This fish is sick. And then apparently someone said, maybe they miss the people. And so they put up cardboard cutouts and drew faces on these cardboard cutouts. And the next day the fish was waving and back to normal. So
I love that story.
Even this
so
fish
much.
needed connection.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. We need interaction, right? Like, I love that this fish though, like, missed its people.
Miss the
Yeah.
people.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's such a perfect transition, because when I taught this lesson to youth, to kids, one of the articles I found was from kidshealth.org, and it was talking about, like, why do kids feel lonely? And honestly, like, kids feel lonely for the same reasons that we feel lonely. But one of the things they mentioned in the article was, you feel lonely because you miss someone. And the sunfish missed its people, like its visitors that it would come and see. And so that's why we feel lonely. Kids feel lonely. We feel lonely. The sunfish feels lonely because you miss somebody. I mean, that's pretty simple. It doesn't have to be any kind of big thing. Sometimes we just miss our people for whatever reason, and they're not there. Some other things that they talked about, reasons why kids might feel lonely, but I think probably relate to all of us. Someone seems mad at you.
Ooh. Yeah.
Right?
I don't like it.
Like, I think some of us like to feel big and bad, like, I don't care. But we care. We care about people not being upset with us. We want people to like us generally. I think there are probably some people that we're like, we've given up on that. But for the most part, we desire people to like us. And so someone is mad at me, that may feel lonely, because I think in our heads, if we think someone's mad at us, what else are we thinking? Like, where do we go with that?
I think that's so true, especially for kids. I'm thinking about my toddler. Like, when he gets in trouble or, we say something to him, he'll go, "Mommy, cheese." And he'll look at me and he'll be like, cheese. He's saying smile is what he's saying.
Yes.
So he's wanting me to smile at him when he knows he's in trouble.
Like, don't be mad at me.
He's
Tell
like,
me it's
don't be
okay."
mad. I love you. Like, because he's a very social kid. And so he'll be like, "Mommy, cheese." And I'm like, fine. I'm not mad anymore. So it's good for both of us. But it's that he knows I'm mad or that he's in trouble, and, he feels, I don't know, whatever he feels, but he wants me to be normal and happy and smiling with him.
I love it. And I think sometimes, like, when we feel like someone is mad at us, or we know we've done something maybe we shouldn't have done, or we feel apologetic, sometimes we convince ourselves that everyone's mad at me. It's not just that one person. Everyone's mad at me. And then that does feel very isolating and lonely. Like, oh my goodness, everyone, I've just ruined it. I've pushed everyone away. And sometimes we're good at just awfulizing. But that is how it can feel for kids and for us. So it can be very lonely. The next one, I think we've all been there at some point. But sometimes the article says kids feel lonely because no one knows what you're going through, or at least that's how you feel and what you think. And I think that it is a very lonely place if we're going through something that we think maybe no one else has ever experienced this thing, no one else understands. And sometimes if we end up actually getting to talk to someone, we realize other people do understand, but everyone's keeping real quiet about it. And when we don't share those hurts or those struggles, then it can feel very lonely for people who are in the midst of those. And that's why it's so important to have support and to hear other people's story, that they've been through something that's tough.
I think that, and maybe that's just because this is the stage that we are in right now, but I feel like preteens, that is very much, no one has ever been through this. They don't know what I'm feeling. And my child sometimes seems surprised whenever I say, I know it's really hard when this happens. That happened to me many, many years ago. But I mean, not that those things don't happen now. Like, yes, people get mad at me. I feel guilty. I don't like it when someone's mad at me, but just specific situations that occur in middle school. And when I tell her, yes, I've done this. I've been there. What? You had that happen to you? And sometimes it's more of a, yeah, okay. But sometimes there's a genuine, like, I didn't know. I didn't know that was a thing that happened to other people.
Yeah, middle school's tough. Everybody's trying to find their place and themselves, and sometimes people step on each other's toes trying to find their place.
Yeah, so I think that's very true among children as well as adults too.
And the next one they mention, I feel like kind of spirals into that too, and I can really see it in middle schoolers, but I think we don't all completely get away from it. But it's others try to make you feel that you don't belong. The idea of being left out. I think we've all been left out of something at some point in our life, and the sting of that, being left out, is tough, and it can be a really lonely place. It's hard, and I think we all understand that, but that is a reason why sometimes we feel lonely, because we've not been included. The next one is kind of stingy, y'all, because I think we're all guilty of doing this to other people, and I think it probably also goes along with our burnout episode we just did, but people seem too busy.
Yeah.
That's kind of ouch. Like, that stings, because we're talking about kids, and we know from talking about our burnout previously that we're busy. And sometimes we can make others feel like we're too busy for them, and that hurts. But it also is a good reminder for us that when we feel like others are too busy for us, it can help us have some insight, and, it's probably not on purpose. And maybe we just need to have a conversation. We just need to communicate and explain how we're feeling. Because I don't think any of us purposely want to be too busy for the people we care about. We want to be supportive.
Once again, you talked about it, have that conversation. Sometimes them conversations are hard conversations to have with people, but we still need to express how we feel, even though it may be a really hard conversation to have.
Absolutely. And the thing I really love about this is it really gets us thinking and understanding our kids and ourselves and loneliness in general. But the article didn't leave us hanging, which I love, because they told us why kids feel lonely, but they also talk about what can I do if I feel lonely. And I think it's nice to have some action items so we can start, what do we do here? So it says notice and name the feeling, and I love that because we've talked about before, awareness is really important, and being aware of how you're feeling and being able to express that is literally the first step to emotional intelligence. So it's so key. It's so important and pivotal for all of us. And if we can teach our kids this, even better, because most of us are just learning how to do this as adults. And it's super hard, but it's really necessary. So notice what you're feeling and name it. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling left out. All of those things. Find a friend. Now that sounds super, find a friend, duh. But reality, like, it kind of feels like a no-brainer.
Is there an app for that?
But the reality is that's hard. It can be really hard. But I think what they're trying to say here is reach out to someone. Make a connection. Phone a friend. And then the next one I really love too, because it's find family time. Find family time. Connect with your family. Do something together. That can really fight that they're too busy if we carve out that time to have family time. This one is really nice. If you're feeling lonely, be kind or helpful. So, like, help someone else. Because I really think we forget this, but when I am kind or helpful to someone else, I receive the biggest gift. And so it may feel counterintuitive, like I'm feeling alone and lonely, like I don't have anything to give, but you do. You have a lot to give. Reach out to someone else, and then I think a lot of times that comes full circle back to you. It also says be friendly. Sometimes when we're feeling lonely or hurt, it can be really tempting to be not so friendly. We might want to be, our saltiness ends up, being not so lovely, but trying to be friendly. Talking about your feelings. I'm all about that. Talk about your feelings. Share your feelings. That may be how you end up finding out what the feeling is so you can name it, because you got to talk about it first. Also, enjoy alone time. Sometimes it's good to have that alone time to think, to plan out your next steps. Spend time in nature. I love that. Sometimes that whole thing, like get some fresh air, be outdoors, it can really lift your spirits and encourage you and is really good for that. So we've talked a lot about loneliness, social isolation, but what we want to do is we want to make connections. And we talk about all of that to really say how important it is to have those people in your life, to have those people around you. And so this next article is super fun. I loved it. I love discussing it with the kids. And so we're going to discuss it today. And it is from psychologytoday.com. And the title of it is 5 Ways to Create Meaningful Connections. And the ideas they give are so fun. Like, I love the wording they use. It was great with kids, but I think it spoke to my soul. So I hope as I say these, y'all be like, oh, I've never thought of it that way. So the first one is greet people with best friend energy.
Okay.
How fun is that? Okay. So think about it. When you see your best friends, how do you respond?
Hey, girl.
Yeah, we get some pep in our voice, right?
Yep.
Like, hey.
We're excited.
We're excited.
We're excited to see our best friends.
A real smile, not the fake smile.
Yeah.
Right. Right. The
would
real
say.
one. Yes.
Total shift in body language, right?
Yes.
It's funny because I was actually telling Ashley this morning, I was talking to her and I was like, I saw a reel on social media this morning and it was like me when I'm just sitting in public versus me when I see my bestie. And this girl was so like straight face, mean mugging, like did not have the time of day for anyone. And then all of a sudden her bestie comes up and her eyes got wide and she hopped up and smiled and was waving. And I was like, yes, I identify with that. But can you imagine if we tried to like greet all the people with best friend energy?
Do you think it would scare them?
Probably.
I mean,
They'd be like, calm it down.
I need you to take that back a notch.
Be like, who is this?
It would be a little bit overwhelming, but
It's in theory, and I've heard the 5 foot, like, say hi or greet someone within 5 feet when you see them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we don't, especially if you don't know who they are. Some people may, but sometimes you're just on a mission, you're going, you're not paying attention. Mm-hmm. But you never know if that, just that greeting to somebody could make their day.
Well, it's funny because if you think about it, like in the article, it talks about how, especially when you're first meeting someone, like that initial time period is like you make a huge impact. Like they say first impressions, you only get one chance to make one, right? And when you greet people with best friend energy, you instantly establish a positive atmosphere. Because even if you're a little frightening because you're all smiley and happy and yay, it's really hard to put someone in a bad mood with that. Like, it's hard for someone to come at you negative when you are smiling and positive body language and peppy tone of voice, and all of those things matter. Now, I'm going to read from the article here just a little bit. It says, best friend energy doesn't mean codependence or lack of boundaries. Okay, so that I think it's always important to be like, we're not going the other way. We're going to keep those. But it says, but by bringing warmth and kindness to interactions, as if you were greeting your best friend, it sets the tone of early interactions, and you create conditions for a closer connection.
I go back to the golden rule. You treat people how you want to be treated.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the last two sentences of this section, I think, are really key and make a ton of sense. So it says, this approach signals to the other person's nervous system, which is wild. But the things we do like put people on alert. That fight or flight and all those things really matter. But it signals that you're here to connect, celebrate, and uplift them. It's a small effort with a significant impact. And I love that because it is easy. This is so doable. Like, this is not a hard task. This is not something that's unrealistic or unmanageable. We can, in fact, and it doesn't have to be like literally your bestie, because that you're probably gonna be a little extra. You're right. That might be a little frightening, but a friend of yours, you're gonna smile. You're gonna be friendly. You're gonna be excited to see them. And I think like. I think that's like, that is what we would. The girls are giving me various faces. It's fun. But I love the way they say this. And when I was talking to my junior homemakers, like, they know what best friend energy is. Like, we all can identify with this. So I love that. So let's see. That was number one. What is the next way? I love all these, by the way.
Can you tell?
I think
this
is her jam.
This is what she does. This is her thing.
So yes, and they've already given me the wrap it up sign. So I'm sorry. I'm gonna try. Okay. So this one, equally fun. Notice their superpowers.
Ooh. Okay. Tell me more. Tell me more.
Okay. So this is fun. Okay. So in the article it says, Coleman emphasizes the importance of recognizing the strengths and superpowers of the people you meet. Think of yourself as a detective on a mission to uncover the greatness in everyone around you.
So I know somebody who does this.
Tell me.
I've never really paid attention to it, like, because she's always like saying nice things to me.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, she does it to everybody. Mm-hmm. And that makes sense. She does that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it makes you feel good.
Those people, like, you feel important. You feel valued. Mm-hmm. You feel seen, I think, which is important because a lot of us don't feel seen throughout the day.
Right. Yeah.
I love this concept because it's the whole idea of like, okay, we've greeted you with our best friend energy, but now like I'm trying to find the good in you. I'm trying to find your gift. I'm trying to identify it and acknowledge it. Not only like she didn't just see it.
Yeah, she says
it.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you feel good. I would imagine it makes her feel good.
And she's not, we're acquaintances. We work, we work together and do some stuff. We're not besties,
mm-hmm.
and I've noticed that it doesn't matter where she's at. She does it in all settings.
Yeah. That's so cool. And that's really a gift that we don't all have. We're not all great at. But if you think about it, we're really good at recognizing negative. Like, I know, like, I have that as a little bit of a fault. But if you can flip it around and notice their superpowers. We all have a superpower. We all have a gift.
Well, haven't you ever been around people like that, that's just bubbly? Mm-hmm. And then if you're in a whatever type of mood you're in, may not be that bubbly, but by the time you leave that person, then they've lifted your spirits to be that bubbly person as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, is this a skill that you can learn? Because I think I'm right there with you. And in my leadership workshop that I was at last week, we were looking at different leadership styles and how everyone is different with anything, as any personality or leadership assessment would show you. But that feels really hard to me. Mm-hmm. And not that I do not want to consider myself a person who is constantly critical and pointing out the negatives in another person. I really think that I do that to myself more than I do that to other people. But ladies, y'all can tell me if I do that to you. But I feel like that's probably not something that I'm really good at. That I might see it, but I'm not good at acknowledging it.
I think maybe being intentional about it.
Yeah.
Because when you meet somebody, whether you know them that well or not, you're mostly like, oh, how's it going? Or you're trying to learn just base information from them. But it's being intentional to try to observe maybe. Maybe it's more observation, more trying to pull stuff from that person versus just the small talk we're used to doing.
Yeah. And I do think there are some people that are naturally good noticers of other people's superpowers. Like, I think that is something they naturally do. Like the person you're talking about, which I think I know who you're talking about. But I also do believe that we can learn this. And we can get better at this. I do think one caveat that's really important is to be genuine with it. Don't force it and just say things because you're trying to. I think you have to really be intuitive, really pay attention. And when you truly spot their superpower, then in the proper moment and timing, you acknowledge it and you kind of give them that, because it is so uplifting for people. But if we are forcing it too much and it comes across as fake or phony, then it may have the opposite impact.
And I'm going to say something about myself here. Our topics that we've talked about all month, when you get burned out, you maybe are genuinely this person, but you are so burnt out that you no longer show that to other people or being positive or uplifting to other people. That kind of puts you in a mindset also where it could harm you, but then you've got to fight your way back to be able to be that bubbly person that you truly are, and just recognizing that you are no longer that uplifting person to somebody else, really is a difficult thing, especially when you are burnt out with life and everything.
Yeah, self-awareness is hard, but important. Actually imperative, I think. So I love these two. I love the bestie energy. I love the superpowers. The third one I also really, really like, and it brings me back to one of Ashley's goals for the year. So this is a good one, and it's embrace the power of play. And so in the article, it says, Plato once said, we can learn more about a person in an hour of play than a year of conversation. And I love that because we're talking about social connections and making deeper, more meaningful connections. And so I think sometimes when we are just having a good time, when we have fun, when we play, we let our guard down. We're not as serious and we're more free to be authentic. And I think that's really cool. And kids do it all the time. Have you ever watched kids on a playground? And they'll get there and they didn't know each other from anybody else. But within 15 minutes, they have assembled themselves and come up with some kind of game. And you would think that they are best friend energy because they are besties now. We forget to do that as we get older. We're not as good at that because we have all our insecurities and our worries and our judgments and all of those things. But embracing the power of play, having a good time. When we go to conferences and we have silly icebreakers that we roll our eyes at, sometimes it's just to let us get our guard down for a minute and make a connection with somebody. Get to know somebody on a different level, not take ourselves so seriously. And so I really like this idea of embracing the power of play, because creativity and playfulness is really fun, and it can, it says in here, it eases social anxiety. Many of us have social anxiety. We may not have anxiety in any other forms, but when we get in a group of people we don't know, it can be hard and it can be difficult. But kind of making it more of a fun environment can make an impact and can help to create those connections. Embrace the power of play. So you're fun, Ashley. When you're having fun, you're increasing your fun. That's a good thing. You're building those connections, deepening those.
Well, when you quoted Plato and said an hour of play, I was like, who has time for an hour of play? What? So clearly I'm doing great.
Yeah, but remember, it's an hour of play versus a year of conversation.
All right. Okay.
And it may not be all at once.
Okay,
Exactly.
there we go.
There you go.
There
It's
we
not
go.
the pressure.
It doesn't have to be in one setting.
I'm sweating thinking about it. Like, who has time for this?
10 minutes a day can
10
do
minutes a day.
wonders.
I can do it.
Okay, so the next one is not as fun and different, but it's super important, and still I like it. Ask meaningful questions. If we want to make legitimate connections with others, we have to ask meaningful questions. If we keep all of our conversations and interactions to, well, it's cold outside, well, it's rainy outside, well, what did you do for the holidays? Did you have fun? What did you eat for dinner? We're not going to learn a whole lot about each other. We're just not. It's when we get vulnerable and we ask those questions and we answer them back for ourselves that we really get to know each other. And we realize how much we have in common and an understanding that we don't always get when we keep it so surface. So it's really important to ask those meaningful questions. And so in the article, they give some example questions. So I like these. What is something amazing you've learned recently? What are you proud of? What's inspiring you right now? What are you grateful for this week? Those are all questions that we could answer right now. We'd have to think. But if we sat here and discussed those questions for the next 30 minutes or so, we would probably learn something new about each other. Now, the four of us in this podcast, we know each other pretty well at this point. We've had a lot of conversations, but I still think when you ask those questions, you dig deeper, you learn more. So when you're thinking about your relationships and wanting to dig deeper, wanting to have more meaningful connections, these are the type of things you can ask. And I will try to be mindful of getting these questions in the show notes so you can discuss them with your people at home, because I think they're really cool questions, and I would make y'all do it right now, but I'm already out of time, so y'all got lucky. Y'all don't have to.
I was about to say, Tiffany, we don't have 30 minutes.
I know, we don't have that.
We're gonna have to press pause. But I will say about that made me think, when we came together for this podcast, several of us already really knew each other well. Joni and I worked in the same office for years. Tiffany and I started very close together at the same time, and she found me, and we, this is just what it is. We're travel buddies. We room together when we go on conferences and all that. But Amanda started in
I
a
was
different.
the newbie.
I know, like, I'm sorry. I'm not like just throw you under the bus and be
It's
like,
fine.
sorry,
It's
Amanda,
totally
we didn't know
fine.
you as well. But really, we were in the same area. Amanda started in a different area, and look how much that has even changed with over just, I think, doing this podcast together. We knew we wanted to do it, and we knew Amanda. We liked Amanda, but I feel like we've gotten to know you so much more through this than if we had not started the podcast. We wouldn't see each other as often, so we wouldn't be able to have those deep conversations at lunch that when we're thinking about that right now.
And we miss Amanda when Amanda's not here. You
Yeah.
know, when
We gave her shout outs.
I
Like, we miss
appreciate
you.
you all. Yes, we're so to catch you all up, I was on maternity leave, and there was a big conference, and they took me with them and took some pictures of me with them. So I felt very loved that you all thought about me to take you with you all.
I love it. It's so good.
Yeah.
Y'all.
So that's what made me think of that. I was like, we started out, yes, 3 of us knew each other. And I don't even know, Joni, if you knew Tiffany that well.
I mean, I knew Tiffany, but not as well as
Not
I
like
know
now.
her
Yeah,
now.
that you do
Yeah.
now. So
Yes.
I think that has been, and I mean, sure, go start a podcast. That's not exactly what I'm telling you to do, but like, if you feel like that would be helpful, have at it.
It does create meaningful connections.
It creates
sure
meaningful
does.
connections. But I think that's just been really great for us.
I agree. And I think this is a great example of meaningful connections because outside of the recording room, we are very supportive of one another in a lot of different ways and in a lot of different endeavors. So I think it shows that when you take the time to get to know someone and dig deeper and talk about those things, it does make meaningful connections. And the last thing that they have, I love this, and we've done a whole episode on this type of thing, but it's valuable to mention. So continue the connection with a gratitude message. So we talk a lot about the face-to-face and the conversations, the spending time together, the meaningful questions and the playtime and the best friend energy and all of that. But also, like, just letting them know that you value them, that you're thinking about them, that you're there for them. And it can be a handwritten note. I'm terrible at that, but if that's your gift, then that's good. It can be a phone call. It can be an email. It can be a text message. It can be a little trinket, a little gift, a little small thing that says, I'm thinking about you. But I think it's really important to continue making those connections in between times of seeing each other and letting that person know that you value them. You value their friendship. You value the time that you spend with them. You value them. You are grateful for them. And so in the article, it says, by sending a gratitude message, you give yourself and the other person the opportunity to relive and appreciate your shared moments. This simple act can double the impact of your time together, reinforcing the connection. I'm gonna end us there because I think that's really full circle. But I love all of this. I hope that our listeners, I hope you can do these things. I think these are very reasonable things to try out. All of them are. And they may not be, they be with different people, different connections, but they will definitely help you dig deeper and make those more meaningful connections and definitely help you not freeze out your friends in this season of life or the seasons of life to come. So this has been Life Simplified. As always, we want to hear from you. Give us the feedback. Give us the information. Give us the ideas. Share your stories. Share your ways that you're creating meaningful connections with others. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. You can email us. All of the things. We're Life Simplified Podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for listening to Life Simplified. We are family and consumer sciences agents with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service. Contact us at lifesimplifiedpodcast@gmail.com.